Bullies stripped her down. Laughing, she kicked the air out of them. Sloane Garrett adjusted her oversized hoodie as she navigated the crowded hallways of Jefferson High School, her slight frame barely registering among the sea of students rushing to their next classes. At barely 5'2", with mousy brown hair that seemed determined to escape any attempt at styling, she had perfected the art of invisibility during her 3 months at this sprawling suburban school. Her family's move from Oregon had been sudden, her father's job transfer giving them little choice but to uproot their lives mid-semester. The hallways of Jefferson High buzzed with the typical energy of a Tuesday morning, lockers slamming shut and sneakers squeaking against polished floors. Sloane kept her head down, clutching her worn canvas backpack closer to her chest as she made her way toward her chemistry class. She had learned quickly that drawing attention at Jefferson meant becoming a target, and she already had enough problems adjusting to her new reality. "Well, well, look what crawled out of the woodwork," came a familiar voice that made Sloane's stomach drop. Bryce Kellerman stepped directly into her path, his imposing 6-foot frame blocking her route to the science wing. As the star quarterback of Jefferson's football team, Bryce commanded respect and fear in equal measure. His sandy blonde hair perfectly styled and his letter jacket worn like armor. Behind him stood his loyal followers, Madison Pierce, whose perfectly manicured appearance and razor-sharp tongue made her the unofficial queen of the school's social hierarchy, and Tanner Brooks, a hulking offensive lineman whose intelligence seemed inversely proportional to his size. "Going somewhere, Oregon?" Madison sneered, using the nickname they had assigned Sloane within days of her arrival. "Don't you know the hallways have a weight limit?" The cruel laughter that followed made Sloane's cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept her eyes fixed on the ground. What they didn't know, what no one at Jefferson High knew, was that Sloane had spent the last 6 years training in Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at her uncle's gym back in Portland. Her uncle Marcus, a former Navy SEAL turned martial arts instructor, had taught her that true strength came not from causing harm, but from having the discipline to avoid it. "The strongest fighters," he had always told her, "are the ones who never have to prove it." "Please, I just need to get to class," Sloane whispered, attempting to step around Bryce's imposing presence. "Did you hear something?" Bryce asked his companions mockingly. "I could have sworn I heard a mouse squeaking." Tanner, ever eager to please his more popular friends, reached out and flicked Sloane's backpack, sending her stumbling forward. Her books scattered across the hallway floor, creating an obstacle course for passing students who stepped over them without a second glance. Some stopped to watch the entertainment, their phones already out to capture whatever humiliation might follow. "Oops," Tanner said with exaggerated innocence, "butterfingers." As Sloane knelt to gather her scattered belongings, Madison deliberately stepped on one of her notebooks, grinding the heel of her expensive boot into the cover. "You know, Oregon, maybe you should consider homeschooling. I hear it's perfect for people who can't handle real social interaction." The crowd of onlookers grew larger, their whispered comments and barely suppressed laughter creating a wall of judgment around Sloane. She could feel her face burning with shame as she crawled on the floor, collecting her things while the 3 tormentors loomed over her like predators savoring their kill. "That's enough," came a voice from the crowd, cutting through the cruel laughter like a blade. Sloane looked up to see Dallas Thompson approaching, his tall frame moving with easy confidence through the gathered students. As the editor of the school newspaper and captain of the debate team, Dallas commanded a different kind of respect than Bryce, one built on intelligence rather than intimidation. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he helped Sloane gather her remaining books, his brown eyes flashing with anger at the scene before him. "What's your problem, Thompson?" Bryce stepped closer, using his slight height advantage to try to intimidate the newcomer. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does," Dallas replied calmly, standing to his full height and meeting Bryce's glare without flinching. "When I see 3 people ganging up on someone half their size, it concerns me plenty." Madison rolled her eyes dramatically, Oh, how sweet. The newspaper geek has found himself a girlfriend. Match made in loser heaven. The comment hit its mark, and Sloane felt her humiliation deepen as she realized Dallas was now being targeted because of her. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, and never have to face any of these people again. But as she watched Dallas stand his ground against the three bullies, something stirred inside her chest. A warmth she hadn't felt since leaving Portland. "Come on," Dallas said quietly, placing a gentle hand on Sloane's shoulder. "Let's get you to class." As they walked away, Sloane could hear Madison's voice carrying down the hallway. "Run along, Oregon. Maybe next time you'll learn to stay out of our way." The chemistry classroom provided temporary refuge, but Sloane's mind wandered throughout the lesson. She found herself stealing glances at Dallas, who sat 2 rows over, his attention focused intently on their teacher's explanation of molecular structures. No one had stood up for her since arriving at Jefferson, and the gesture had affected her more than she cared to admit. Over the following weeks, the pattern of harassment intensified. Bryce and his friends seemed to take perverse pleasure in making Sloane's life miserable, timing their attacks for maximum humiliation. They would accidentally bump into her in the cafeteria, sending her lunch tray crashing to the floor. They left cruel notes in her locker, calling her names that cut deep into her already fragile self-esteem. Madison organized a social media campaign that featured unflattering photos of Sloane taken without her knowledge, paired with captions that mocked everything from her clothes to her appearance. The worst incidents occurred in the gymnasium during their shared physical education class. Coach Williams, a former college basketball player who seemed more interested in his coaching salary than student welfare, consistently turned a blind eye to the escalating harassment. During volleyball games, Bryce would deliberately spike the ball at Sloane's face. When she attempted to participate in basketball drills, Madison would trip her or accidentally elbow her in the ribs, hard enough to leave bruises. "Maybe you should stick to activities more suited to your skill level," Madison suggested loudly after Sloane missed an easy layup, her words drawing snickers from nearby classmates. "I hear the chess club is looking for members." Through it all, Dallas continued to show Sloane small kindnesses that helped her get through each day. He would save her a seat in the classes they shared, offer to be her partner for group projects, and walk with her between classes whenever their schedules aligned. Their friendship grew stronger with each passing day, built on shared interests in literature and quiet conversations about their dreams for the future. "You don't have to keep defending me," Sloane told him one afternoon as they sat together in the library, working on a joint project for their American history class. "I don't want them to make your life miserable too." Dallas looked up from his research notes, his expression serious. "They already tried that, remember? Besides, someone needs to stand up to them. They can't keep treating people like this just because they think they're untouchable." His words resonated with something deep inside Sloane, reminding her of the lessons her uncle had taught her about courage and standing up for what was right. But every time she considered fighting back, she heard his voice warning her about the responsibility that came with her training. "Your hands are weapons now," he had told her during one of their last sessions together. "Use them wisely, and only when you have no other choice." The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon in late October. Sloane had been looking forward to the weekend, planning to spend Saturday with Dallas at the local farmers market, when disaster struck in the school parking lot. She was walking toward the bus stop when she heard raised voices near the student parking area. "I said, give me your wallet, newspaper boy." Bryce's voice carried across the asphalt, accompanied by the sound of someone being shoved against a car. Sloane's blood ran cold as she saw Dallas pressed against the side of Bryce's truck, the larger boy's hand fisted in his shirt, while Madison and Tanner flanked them like vultures. Dallas's backpack lay on the ground, its contents scattered across the pavement, including what appeared to be his laptop computer. "I don't have any cash," Dallas said, trying to maintain his composure despite the obvious threat. I told you, I don't carry money. Then maybe we need to teach you about proper preparation, Madison said with a cruel smile, pulling out her phone to record the confrontation. This is going to be perfect for my social media followers. Local nerd gets reality check. Tanner grabbed Dallas's laptop from the ground, holding it high above his head. Wonder if this thing can fly, he mused, clearly intending to smash the expensive device against the pavement. That's when Sloane saw red. The sight of Dallas being terrorized because of his friendship with her triggered something primal and protective inside her chest. All of her uncle's warnings about restraint and responsibility seemed to evaporate in the face of watching someone she cared about being hurt. Without conscious thought, Sloane dropped her backpack and strode across the parking lot, her posture changing with each step. Gone was the hunched, defensive stance she had maintained for months. Instead, she moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had spent countless hours perfecting her technique, her center of gravity low and balanced. "Let him go," she said, her voice carrying a steel edge that none of them had ever heard before. The three bullies turned toward her with expressions of disbelief and amusement. Bryce released his grip on Dallas's shirt, apparently finding the idea of Sloane challenging him too entertaining to ignore. "Or what, Oregon?" he laughed, puffing out his chest. "You going to bore us to death with one of your sad little sob stories?" "Yeah," Madison chimed in, still recording. "This is even better. The mouse thinks she's a lion." Sloane noticed the small crowd of students that had begun to gather, their phones out and recording as word spread quickly through the school's social networks. She saw Dallas shake his head slightly, clearly worried about what might happen if she escalated the situation. But she also saw the bruise forming on his cheek and the fear in his eyes, and her resolve hardened like steel. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Sloane said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable threat. "Let him go and walk away." Bryce's laughter grew louder and more mocking. "You know what? I think Oregon needs to learn her place once and for all." He lunged forward, clearly intending to grab Sloane the same way he had grabbed Dallas. What happened next unfolded so quickly that most of the watching students barely registered the individual movements. As Bryce reached for her, Sloane stepped to the side with liquid grace, her training taking over completely. She caught his outstretched arm, used his own momentum against him, and executed a perfect hip throw that sent all 200 pounds of quarterback crashing onto the asphalt with a bone-jarring impact. The parking lot fell silent, except for Bryce's groaning as he struggled to understand what had just happened. The cocky smile had vanished from his face, replaced by shock and the beginnings of genuine fear. Tanner, seeing his leader on the ground, dropped Dallas's laptop and charged forward like an enraged bull, but Sloane was ready for him. As he reached for her, she ducked under his clumsy grab and drove her knee upward into his solar plexus with surgical precision. The impact doubled him over instantly, all the air rushing out of his lungs in a whoosh that could be heard across the parking lot. Madison, realizing that her entertainment had turned into something far more serious, tried to back away while still recording. But Sloane's attention was already focused on her, and the girl found herself trapped between parked cars with nowhere to run. "Please," Madison stammered, her earlier bravado completely evaporated. "I was just recording. I didn't do anything." "You did plenty," Sloane replied, her voice still eerily calm. "You've been doing plenty for months." Instead of violence, however, Sloane simply plucked the phone from Madison's trembling hands and deleted the video she had been recording. She handed the device back without a word, but the message was clear. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. Bryce had managed to struggle back to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "You psycho freak," he screamed, launching himself at Sloane with wild, uncontrolled swings. This time, Sloane didn't hold back. She weaved between his punches with the fluid movements of a trained fighter, her body moving like water around his clumsy attacks. When she saw her opening, she struck with lightning speed. a perfect right cross that connected with his jaw and sent him stumbling backward, but it was her follow-up that truly demonstrated her skill. As Bryce tried to regain his balance, Sloane pivoted and delivered a devastating roundhouse kick to his midsection that lifted him off his feet and sent him crashing into the side of his own truck. The impact left a visible dent in the metal, and Bryce slumped to the ground, clutching his ribs and gasping for air. The crowd of students watched in stunned silence as Sloane stood over her defeated tormentors, breathing steady and controlled despite the physical exertion. She looked down at Bryce, who was struggling to catch his breath, and for a moment, everyone expected her to deliver a final, devastating blow. Instead, she stepped back and extended her hand to help him up. "It's over," she said simply. "It doesn't have to happen again." Bryce stared at her outstretched hand for a long moment, his pride warring with the obvious reality of his situation. Finally, swallowing his ego, he accepted her help and struggled to his feet. "How?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "How did you do that?" 6 years of training," Sloane replied matter-of-factly. "My uncle thought I should know how to protect myself." The gathering crowd began to disperse as teachers started arriving, drawn by reports of a fight in the parking lot. But the damage to the Bullies' reputation had already been done. Videos of the confrontation, taken by witnesses, were already circulating through the school's social media networks. By Monday morning, everyone at Jefferson High would know that the quiet girl from Oregon had single-handedly defeated 3 of the school's most feared students. Coach Williams arrived just as the crowd was breaking up, his expression stern as he surveyed the scene. "What happened here?" he demanded, looking between Sloane and the 3 students who were clearly nursing injuries. "Just a misunderstanding, Coach," Dallas said quickly, having retrieved his laptop and confirmed it was undamaged. "Everything's been resolved." Bryce nodded reluctantly, apparently deciding that admitting he had been beaten by Sloane would be even more humiliating than staying silent. "Yeah, it's fine. Just an accident." Over the following weeks, the atmosphere at Jefferson High underwent a dramatic transformation. Word of Sloane's hidden skills spread through the student body like wildfire, but instead of fear, she found herself gaining respect and admiration. Students who had previously ignored her existence now nodded respectfully when she passed in the hallways. Others approached her with stories of their own bullying experiences, finding courage in her example. Bryce, Madison, and Tanner maintained a careful distance from both Sloane and Dallas, their once dominant presence in the school's social hierarchy significantly diminished. The videos of their defeat had become something of a legend among the student body, proof that even the most powerful bullies could be brought low by someone they had underestimated. The most significant change, however, was in Sloane herself. Gone was the hunched, defensive posture she had maintained for months. She walked with confidence now, her head held high, and her movements reflecting the inner strength she had finally allowed herself to embrace. The oversized hoodies were replaced by clothes that actually fit, and she no longer felt the need to hide behind her hair. "You know," Dallas said one afternoon as they sat together in their favorite corner of the library, "I always suspected there was more to you than met the eye." Sloane smiled, feeling more at peace than she had since arriving at Jefferson. "My uncle always said that true strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." "Wise man," Dallas replied, reaching over to take her hand. "I'm glad you finally decided to listen to him." 3 months later, as Sloane walked across the stage to receive recognition for her academic achievements, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. Standing up for herself hadn't turned her into a bully. It had shown her the true meaning of strength. She had found her voice, her confidence, and perhaps most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to show them that their victims are stronger than they ever imagined. In the audience, Dallas applauded enthusiastically, his own bruises long healed, but his respect for Sloane stronger than ever. Nearby, she could see Bryce sitting with his teammates, and when their eyes met, he offered a small nod of acknowledgement, not friendship perhaps, but a grudging respect that hadn't existed before their confrontation in the parking lot. As Sloane accepted her award and looked out over the assembled crowd, she finally understood what her uncle had been trying to teach her all along. True strength wasn't about the ability to hurt others. It was about having the courage to stand up when it mattered most, the wisdom to know when to fight and when to show mercy, and the character to remain true to yourself even when others tried to tear you down. The quiet girl from Oregon had found her voice, and Jefferson High would never be the same.